Well, Brock, you managed to say some really ignorant shit again. Well, let me start off with you saying that if man's not made in the image of the divine, then he's made in the image of carbon dioxide. Wow. Sometimes the stupidity you come out with hurts my brain, dude. It really does. But hey, I find it interesting that you'd choose CO2 because we, along with all other animals, are made of mostly carbon. We get our carbon from eating plants or from eating animals who have eaten plants. Plants get their carbon as a byproduct of photosynthesis. They convert carbon dioxide into sugars, and there's some carbon left over. They use that to to form the hardness of their cellular walls. So the reason I find that interesting is not because I think we were made in the image of carbon. So I wouldn't personally claim that we're made in the image of CO2. But there is a common theist claim that man is made from the dust, as said in Genesis. And then they back it up by citing how much carbon we have in us. What's funny about that is that's actually less factual than the claim that we get our carbon through plants from CO2. So you stating that we're made in the image of CO2 is actually a hell of a lot closer to the truth than the Bible's claim that we came from dirt. So congratulations on that one. And you start talking about we use Marxist and Orwellian language. I think that's rather interesting. What language exactly are you talking about? As far as Orwell goes, you're the one who believes that there's a magic man in the sky who's watching what everybody does. You're the one who believes that there's a magic man in the sky who's more worried about what we think than what we do. So I think maybe you need to rethink that whole little poorly veiled ad hominem attack on atheists as a group, because it completely fails. And then of course you go on to state that if we weren't made in God's image, then we're equated to mere animals. Mere animals. But really, other than the unfounded assumption that we look like an invisible man, which I don't, what makes us different from animals? How does acknowledging the fact that we are animals detract from our worth as humans? How does acknowledging facts change the very facts that are mentioned? You state that kindness to animals or being kind to animals has no bearing on a person's kindness towards humans. But this is patently false, as one of the earliest signs of sociopathic personalities is that they abuse animals. So, quite frankly, the exact opposite of what you're saying is true. It's actually a rather telling guide as to whether or not people care about people if they care about animals. Now, you tried to back up your ignorant claim by invoking the Nazis, and I find it interesting that you mentioned them as well. And you did so, again, in a poorly veiled ad hominem attack. Hey, congratulations on 2 in a row. Good job with that. But Nazis don't fit what you're claiming they fit. You're trying to equate them with secular humanists, and they weren't. And they're not. They were then, and they are now, creationists. If you don't believe this, go read Mein Kampf. It's very clearly denounces, in no uncertain terms, evolution and things of that nature. And they were Christian. They very clearly supported God, Christianity, etc. While their reasons for going after the Jews were manifold, one of the big ones was that they, being Christians in a part of Europe that was not very friendly to Jews to begin with, as an excuse to go after this group that was hated, they went after them. They thought of them as subhuman animals because of the idea that they had Christ executed. They didn't see Jews or any of the other people who they executed as humans. They saw them as parasites. And in fact, their willingness to treat animals well is reflected in how well they treated those who they did consider to be human. You claim that we believe that random chance spawned us. No. Natural selection isn't random. The natural gathering of chemicals into the structures that they gather themselves into that's been seen isn't random. You then claim that the basis of the ID evolution battle is about human worth and whether or not we're a product of the divine. That's not quite the case. What the debate is about isn't whether or not it should be accepted, isn't whether or not we should accept God, which quite frankly I would be more than happy to do if there was any evidence that he existed. It's completely about evidence. There's as much evidence supporting evolution, in fact in some ways more evidence supporting evolution than there is supporting germ theory. And yet I bet you still take antibiotics when you get an infection. Intelligent design, on the other hand, hasn't collected any evidence that denying evidence is not evidence. Period. Now, you did mention cloning, abortion, euthanasia, and stem cell research. Now, I'm not going to get into anything about abortion, not because not because I'm agreeing with you, not because I have nothing to say about it, but simply because it comes down to a matter of which life is more important, the life of the mother or the life of the child, and that's a debate that's too long to fit into this video, so I'm not really going to dig into it. But as far as cloning goes, human cloning is illegal, and even most atheists tend to be loath to clone humans. You specified euthanasia, and I don't understand that one at all, because euthanasia isn't legalizing suicide so much as it's legalizing suicide in cases where the person is suffering. And what I don't understand is how you can say that ending a person's suffering is somehow wrong. I'm not a big fan of necessarily jumping straight to the euthanasia for reasons other than it's that drastic. Once there's a point where nothing can be medically done for them and they're in excruciating pain, I don't see how it's wrong. And I don't understand how you can think it's wrong, because the quality of life is more important than the duration, and to me that makes it more valuable simply because the quality makes it that way. You also mentioned stem cell research. Now, as far as relates to abortion, I can understand that, and I'm not even going to argue with you about that. However, stem cells are often collected from umbilical cords of newborns, the leftover embryos from fertility treatments for women. Now, by outlawing stem cell research and not specifying specifically abortion, what you're doing is taking away people's rights to use those to improve other people's lives. For instance, Parkinson's and Alzheimer's patients who could possibly benefit from these. Now, the fetuses from the fertility clinics, if you were to go so far as to say fertility clinics are wrong because they throw away fetuses, again, there's nothing I can say about that, but you didn't specify that. If they're going to be discarded, what's the harm in, instead of throwing them away and making them worthless, taking them to improve the lives of sick people who are already living? I just don't get it, and I don't think you thought it through. My God's will becomes me when he speaks to me.